Okay, 2.2 part 2. We're gonna kind of tap into graphing a little bit, but focus on X-intercepts and Y-intercepts. So our intercepts. Since 2 points determine a line, one way to graph a linear function is to find the points at which the graph intersects each axis and connects them with a line. So we can find our X-intercept when y is equal to 0. So our X-intercept is when it crosses the x-axis, but it's when y is equal to 0. And then our Y-intercept is when x is equal to 0. So let's look at an example. So we need to find the X-intercept and the Y-intercept of the graph of 2x minus 3y plus 8 is equal to 0, then graph the equation. So first thing we're going to do is find the X-intercept. And we can find the X-intercept by setting y equal to 0. So in our equation, 2 times x minus 3y plus 8 is equal to 0. We're changing out this y and making it a 0. So it now becomes 2x minus 3 times 0 plus 8 is equal to 0. So to find the X-intercept, we need to make y 0. What is 3 times 0?
0.
0. So we have 2x plus 8, because this is just 0, is equal to 0. And now we solve for x. So what would we need to do to solve for x?
Subtract 8.
Subtract 8 on both sides. So we get 2x is equal to negative 8. And then what do we do?
Divide.
Divide by 2. So x is equal to negative 4. All right, for y, we do the same thing, but we need to make x equal to 0. So our y-intercept, we start with our equation, 2x minus 3y plus 8 is equal to 0, and we change out this x and put a 0 for it. So what's 2 times 0?
0.
0. So that's 0 minus 3y. So we don't need to put the 0, we just put our minus 3y. All right, so we have minus 3y plus 8 is equal to 0. What do we need to do to solve for y here? How do we solve for y?
Subtract 8.
Subtract 8 on both sides. So negative 3y is equal to negative 8. Then we need to divide by negative 3. So we get y is equal to 8 over 3. And we can just leave it as an improper fraction like that. So we have our x-intercept as negative 4, and our y-intercept is 8 over 3. So now it says we need to graph the equation. So
Wait, why didn't you keep the negatives?
what's a negative divided by a negative? A positive. So that's why I didn't keep them, because we had 2 negatives. So negative divided by a negative becomes a positive. So when our x is -4, that means our y is 0. So our x is -4 and our y is 0. So we're going to graph that point, -4, 0. So we go to the left 4 and then stay at 0. So our graph crosses the x-axis at -4. Now when our x is 0, our y is 8/3. 8/3 is about 2.5-ish, close to 3. So a little bit more than 2.5. So when we stay on 0, we go up 2 and close to 3. So our y-intercept is right there. And then to graph these 2 points, we just put a line through the 2 of them. So this would be our graph of this equation here. All right, let's go to the next example. So we need to find the x-intercept and y-intercept of the graph and then graph the equation. So we're going to do the same thing. For our x-intercept, we need to make y 0. So we have 2x. Yes.
You go back up. I didn't finish understanding.
I'll go back. Okay. 0. So we would plug in 0 for y. So we have plus 5 times 0 minus 10 is equal to 0. 5 times 0 is 0, so then we just have 2x minus 10 is equal to 0. How do we solve for x here? Add 10. So we add 10 to both sides. We get 2x is equal to 10. And then we divide by 2. So x is equal to 5. So our graph crosses the x-axis at 5. So if we were to graph this point, we go to the right 5, and we know our graph is going to cross right here at 5. Now we need to find our y-intercept. So our y-intercept, we need to change our x to be 0. So we have 2 times 0 plus 5y minus 10 is equal to 0. 2 times 0 is 0, so then we're just left with 5y minus 10 is equal to 0. We add 10 to both sides. So 5y is equal to 10. We divide both sides by 5, so y is equal to 2. So our graph crosses the y-axis at 2. So we just need to go up 2. We know our graph is going to cross right there. So once we have our 2 points, we just connect them with our line. So our graph of 2x plus 5y minus 10 is this green line here. So for our x-intercept, which one has to become 0, the x or the y?
Y.
The y. So our x-intercept, we change y for 0, so we have 0 is equal to 5x plus 12. Now how would we solve for x?
Subtract 12.
Subtract 12. So we get negative 12 is equal to 5x. What do we do next?
Divide 5.
Divide by 5. So negative 12 over 5 is equal to x. So our graph is going to cross the x-axis at negative 12 over 5. We can change this to a mixed number so it'll be easier for us to graph it. 5 goes into 12 twice with 2 left over. So this would be negative 2 and 2/5. So going to our graph now. We just said our graph is going to cross the x-axis at negative 2 and 2/5. Would negative 2 be to the right or to the left?
Left.
Left. So we go to the left 2, almost 3, and put our point right there. Now we need to find our y-intercept. So what do we do to find the y-intercept?
Make the X 0.
Make the x 0. So we have y is equal to, the x becomes 0, and all we're left with is 12. So y is equal to 12. We don't even have to do any math here. That's our y-intercept is 12. So since our y-intercept is 12, we go up 12 on our graph. And our graph crosses the y-axis right there. So then we connect our 2 points with a line. Typically a straight line, but Miss Carver's using her finger, so it's not that great. So it's a little crooked. But this green line would be our graph of y is equal to 5x plus 12. So our last example, we need to do the same thing. How would we find our x-intercept?
By making y 0.
We make y 0. So we have 2x is equal to 12. How do we solve for x?
Divide by 2.
Divide by 2. So x is equal to 6. So we can go ahead and graph that. We're going to go to the right 6 and put our point there because our graph crosses the x-axis at 6. Now how do we find our y-intercept?
Making x 0.
We make x 0. So that we have 3y is equal to 12. How do we solve for y?
Divide by 3.
Divide by 3. So y is equal to 4. So then we go up 4, put our point right there, and then we connect our 2 points with a line. So our graph of 2x plus 3y is equal to 12 is this green line here.